Welcome back to Jacques in the Garden. Today, we've got a whole lot of work to do. Now, we always have a lot of work to do, but today especially, I was sick for the past week. It's been really hot, so it's not been fun to be sick while it's really hot, knowing that there is a lot of work to do in the garden. So today, we're gonna start tackling it. And today, we're also going to be talking about a couple different things. First off, summer pruning, what it is and why you should do it. We're gonna be talking about it with this plum tree in a moment here, but I'm also going to be talking a lot about some of the stuff that you don't really see in like timelines or guides, and that is, when is it time to cut your losses on parts of your garden and start transitioning into something else? Because that is what September is. It is a transition season. True fall is just around the corner, and there are decisions to be made. There's plants out here that maybe will produce a little bit more if you leave them, but if you do that, you might be losing out on a much better harvest later in the year. So we're gonna cover all that today. We have a lot to do. Let's get started with this plum tree right over here. So what we're doing today is summer pruning our trees. Now, the act of summer pruning is named so because you prune it in the summer while the tree is still active and not dormant. So when a tree like a plum, an apple, a peach, any of those kinds of trees that are deciduous, they will go dormant and drop all their leaves. Now, if you prune at that point, that's fine, but a lot of that energy that was left in those branches is going back down into the root system, and next year you're gonna get even more sort of vegetative growth. That's the idea, at least. Now, if you come through though, instead, and you find a branch you wanna cut, so this one I wanna cut to about 2/3 of the length away, I'm gonna go ahead and chop that. What I've done is I've removed all of these leaves before the plant has actually had a chance to remove the carbohydrates from those leaves, drop the leaves, and store them in the roots. Now, this might sound like a bad thing, and in some ways it is, but it's a bad thing on purpose. What we're trying to do here is encourage this tree to remain small. I don't want to get on a giant 12-foot ladder to have to pick my plums up in the air, where realistically the birds are probably going to get them. And also, if there's too much fruiting on the exterior, like the long branches that I can barely even see the tip of, what's going to happen is that branch will break. By pruning this down earlier in the summertime, what I'm doing is I'm encouraging more fruit to develop in the next year. Instead, the fruit's going to focus on its development right along this branch that I've cut, instead of all the way along the entire surface. At least that's the idea. Now, the main thing here is that we are stealing away some of the energy from the tree, and in exchange, this tree will not be as big. Now, the other thing that's in particular of importance for a plum tree is that plum trees get this disease called silver leaf disease, which is really prevalent in the winter time. So if you want to prevent that disease from spreading through your plum trees, it's actually best to do it right now in the summertime. Now, my general goal here is to find any branch and then remove about 2/3 of it. The second thing I want to do here is make sure that whichever leaf I'm leaving, the last leaf, I want to make sure it's pointed out, because that leaf is going to be where the new branch will form. I don't want the branches to go into the trees, I want them to go out away from the tree. So I'm always looking for an exterior facing leaf, and then I'm cutting about 2/3 of the length. So I'm gonna be using my loppers and my clippers here. One thing I also will mention is that I went through and I cleaned these, removed all the rust, sharpened them, oiled them, sanitized them with Lysol, which removes all viruses, and now they're cutting like a dream. Nice, clean, sharp cuts. That's exactly what you want when you're pruning a tree. So we're gonna go around all the way through this tree, chop all these branches down, and you'll see just how much we reduce this tree. And also that's going to give us a little bit more sun here into this part of the garden now that it's starting to approach fall and we're getting a little less sunshine through the day. So we ended up chopping a pretty decent amount of biomass here, in particular, lots of leaves, definitely plenty of branches too. And now, while this might feel a little scary, and honestly, doesn't look the most beautiful thing right now, this should lead to a smaller tree in general next year, should encourage more fruit production early in the season, especially lower down on these branches that we've cut. So now I could reach the top of any one of these branches, which is perfect because that is where the fruit will be. That is the goal of summer pruning: control the height, control the fruiting, and also make sure it doesn't have too much energy so that it keeps turning into a gigantic tree. So with this done, got to move over into that corner because it's getting a little bit insane with a whole lot of Mexican sunflower. Actually, I want to do a quick call out on this before we move on, and that is that this is not the final pruning. I did the rough pruning, so I dropped the height, tried to control the growth of the tree itself, but there are still plenty of branches that need to get removed. There's branches like this one here that's clearly growing in between other branches. That's not ideal in the long run. So I plan on going through and doing a much more careful sort of tune-up and cleaning out any of these extra little scragglers, but that could also wait until winter. The only reason to do it now is to avoid that silver leaf disease. So I might come back through, a little bit later in the season because I'll probably get another secondary regrowth. Here in San Diego, trees don't want to stop growing. So that's just kind of the name of the game. Now let's move on to the next task. This area of my garden is so overgrown, I can't even really get in here. Part of that is, of course, the humble tomatillo. Once this thing gets going. It is hard to stop. I put a puny little wooden stake here that literally broke and now it's crawling around the ground. But I am excited because it feels like these are starting to fill up. We will have tomatillo soon. I do like me a little bit of salsa verde. Now, the question in hand is, believe it or not, but there is a raised Birdie's Epic bed right in here. It's actually growing broccoli. It's been growing broccoli all summer long. It's actually been doing okay. I've actually gotten a few heads of broccoli, except for the fact that I'm only actually utilizing the front foot of this bed because the rest has been taken over by this ridiculous giant Mexican sunflower. Now the thing is I allowed it to because it had so many blooms. The butterflies love it, especially the monarchs. But at this point, it got so big and overgrown that it's actually slowed down its own blooming because it's producing so much seed. There will probably be infinite volunteers of Tithonia or Mexican sunflower in this part of my garden for the coming years. Now, I don't want to get rid of it into the green bin. There's no disease or anything like that. So I think what we'll do is we'll chop this up using the lawnmower, maybe with some of those tree branches we cut earlier. But first, let's get that out of the way and see what the heck the broccoli even looks like at this point in the year. And then we'll talk about what we're going to plant here next, because I'm very excited for that. Now you can probably see that there is indeed a garden bed in here that goes all the way back. There might be 300 spiders on me right now, but let's keep going. We got a couple more cuts to make. So the ones that were in the back here, that were in the native soil, not in the garden bed, fully died. And I'm surprised they got this big because there's no irrigation back there. So they were living on something for quite a while. Wow, this funnel back here has like 30 stems coming out of the base. So that explains why I had so many fennel flowers back here. Again, fennel flowers, great for pollinators. I decided to leave them, but I let them go a little too long. I think we got all of it. Let me get all this plant detritus out of the way. And here's what's left in the bed. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 broccoli plants that are alive and actually still producing. This one's got a little weird mutated looking floret that formed, and it actually looks just fine and dandy. It's been tasting good. I've been very impressed by it. This is a variety called Green Magic that I tried for the first time. It's supposed to be one that grows in the summer. Now this one did have plenty of shade from all those Mexican sunflowers, but nevertheless, it handled the heat. Just because there's shade doesn't mean it's not hot outside. And I've gotten quite a few harvests just like this one here. So now it is time to fully clean out this bed, get all this random plant debris out of here, and then we'll move on to the next task. So here we are at the bed, and now it's time to do the final touches and clean up and reset this thing before we take a visit to the seedling bench, and you can see just how many options I have cooking right now in the moment. Now there's something else I wanted to point out, and that is how much shadow you're seeing right now. That is the exact reason I planted my broccoli in this bed through the summer, because I knew it got plenty of afternoon shade. Now at this point it's around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's why we have so much shadow. In the morning it gets plenty of sun, but this is another and very, very critical, important thing for you guys to think about at home, which is that as you get into the fall and winter garden, if that's one that you want to grow in, sunlight is actually the most important thing by far. Knowing that this gets shade right now at this time of year means that it will almost certainly get shade in the winter even more so. So I am planning on putting brassicas in here. They should do fine. Another thing I could do in here, for example, are like leafy greens, something like lettuce, bok choys, maybe cabbages, anything like that. Even spinach would do well in here because again, it's going to be cooler than the rest of the beds and it's going to get less sun. But for now, let's go ahead and clean it up. So now we've cleaned the bed and it's time to reassess and refresh this bed. Now the things that I'm going to be adding in here, knowing that there was a gigantic multiple sunflowers in there and also broccoli that grew for quite a long time. It didn't get massive, but it definitely took some nutrients. First thing I want to do is something I'm trying to add more of again, is some azomite. This is just trace mineral. It's like rock dust. There's many different types of it out there, like crushed basalt, things like that. This is essentially to provide a mineral component to my raised bed soil. Now, most raised bed soil is made out of organic stuff. There's generally some sort of drainage, you know, like a pumice, maybe a perlite, but there aren't really like fine minerals that break down and feed your soil. So what I want to do is add some of that mineral component. Let me get a nice scoop of it here. I'm going to just scatter it across the entire bed. You don't need much. This is just for trace minerals, and in theory should lead to healthier, more nutritious harvests. Next, I'm gonna be putting on some fertilizer. This is an all-purpose one, the Happy Frog 645, 6 being the biggest number, which is nitrogen. And that's really what I want right now because I'm going into the green season, the fall and spring. I'm growing things that are basically all green, things that are essentially leaves, cabbages, kale, even broccoli. So having more nitrogen is actually a great thing for this particular growing season. Compared to something like, you know, in the summer, when you want a lot of fruiting plants, they might need more potassium and phosphorus. Now I also want to mention the technique that I just did there, which is that I'm not mixing this all up. I'm just scattering it as evenly as I can on the surface. To me, this is more guaranteed. If I try to mix it, I might end up collecting all the stuff into one little pocket, but by scattering it broadcast out like this, you can see the distribution. It's pretty clear that it's pretty equally and evenly distributed. There might be a little bit of high patches, but this is much better than me trying to blend this all up and hoping that I get a perfect system. So the reason why I did it in this order is because I want the soil on top. That way the fertilizer is already automatically buried. I don't have to dig it in. And also it should break down faster when it's buried in the soil fully like this. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and grab that bag of raised bed soil, and then we'll top this bed off. And now let's clear up some things. First, do you need to add soil to your beds every year? No, you don't, but you will notice natural settling. This does happen actually on in-ground beds as well. Usually though, you don't build up like your in-ground bed as tall as you would like a raised bed, so you don't notice the slumping as much, but every bed will deplete over time. Things like compaction will cause it. Things like consumption of the organic matter will cause it. Remember, we're adding things like compost, things like the worms are breaking it down and feeding our plants. Then we're harvesting those plants. Every time we do that, we take a little bit out. So that is why you end up getting settling. Now, the other thing is you don't have to top it off with raised bed soil. You could top it off with compost. And again, like I said, you don't even have to top it off. It's more of a preference. In my opinion, it is better to top it off. A, you get new soil. B, the plants are a little higher up, which means they'll get a little bit more light. And it's just a little bit easier for me to organize. I don't want all my beds with the soil sunken all the way down to the bottom. To me, that's not really helpful. So at this point, I feel pretty good about this bed being reset and ready to plant. I could put another bag if I wanted to, but at this point, I think there's enough soil. So let's go take a look at these seedlings though, because there are a lot of options right now. So here we are over at the seedling table. Let's see what we've got. Now, I did show you guys this last time, but basically I just have a shade cloth covering all of my seedlings right now because remember, we're trying to grow our fall crops, but it is still summer. So today it's in like the upper mid 80s, and we don't want our broccolis sitting out there in the open sun getting blasted by the heat. This is what we want. This is one of my broccolini starts. This is one that I started in a 6-cell, potted up into a 4-cell, and look at that, guys. It is looking absolutely perfect. Now, part of the reason why I put this cover is that a lot of these got absolutely wrecked by cabbage moths, cabbage loopers at one point, so I needed the barrier just for that. But the shade has also helped out quite a bit. Now, a couple other things I have going is another round of young brassicas. These are just started about a week ago, so they will get split up and potted up as well. I've got some early tomatoes like New Girl and Moscovich. I've got some herbs like parsley, cilantro, a lot of different flowers, such as these snapdragons here, that definitely need to move on out somewhere in the garden. So we've got a lot of different stuff to work with here, a lot of flowers for sure. The main thing is that we just need to get more plants out of the garden. So in that particular bed, I'll probably end up shoving maybe some cabbages since it's a lower sun area. But now let's get back out there because there are more beds to clear. Now there is some good news in the garden, and that is that the tomatoes I planted on top of the tomatoes that had root knot nematode are actually growing really, really well. They're actually growing a little bit too well, and I have not tied them up this whole week. I've been sick. And look at this. I mean, this is all just one plant here. It's quite vigorous. All three of them absolutely look incredible and have filled in the space really, really, really vigorously. So I'm very happy to see that. So we're gonna give them a quick Florida weave tie up and then start talking about what else we're seeing in the background here, because there's some more stuff that definitely has to go. So if you go out to your garden and this is what you see on your tomato plant, then there's a good chance you have a tomato hornworm. Now, I know a lot of you guys are winding down on your tomato season, but this is a great reminder of what to look out for. You see, this is the stem. It used to have leaves on it. There are no leaves left. That is what tomato hornworms do. Now, at the moment, I am not seeing it on the plant. That doesn't mean it's not on there. They're surprisingly good at hiding, but it could also mean that a bird came and already ate my problem away for me. So I'm not gonna worry about it. If it was more severe, I would definitely look harder, but it seems like it got a couple of branches And then now I don't see any other damage. So I'm assuming a bird got a little tasty treat and did the pest care for me. So this one at the end here is the big beef tomato, and it is by far the most vigorous. This thing is absolutely crushing, especially the one in the middle here, which I think is the lemon boy. So that's good to know. The big beef is a very vigorous tomato plant. So there we have it. The 3 tomatoes that were planted the latest in the season are looking really good. I don't see any fruit set on them. I see plenty of flowers, plenty of growth. So that is looking good. But hopefully we'll get a couple to set before the sunlight hours drop too much. Luckily where these are positioned, they essentially get sun all day long. So I'm fingers crossed, hopeful that they will be able to produce something for us. But speaking of producing, it's time to finally walk away from this wall of tomatoes behind me. I'm pretty sure they all have root knot nematode because they basically have not done a single thing for me in the past 2 months. They've just been sitting there, kind of growing, kind of not growing. I see a couple tomatoes maybe forming, but it's time to cut our losses, guys. It's not worth leaving stuff in the ground for too long on the hope of just getting one more tomato plant or just one more actual tomato harvest, literally 1 tomato. Instead, I'd much rather get that out of the way, try to solve whatever problem might be. Let's take a look and see if there is one, and then work towards the future instead. Actually, I lied. Before we get to these tomatoes, I have to talk about the most ridiculous melon I've ever grown. And when I say ridiculous, I mean the best melon I've ever grown. This thing has absolutely shocked me. Now, I think I planted this back in May for our What to Plant series on the Epic Gardening channel. And I was like, oh, you know, now's a good time to start the Minnesota Midget. It's more of a cold climate one. It should do well at this time of year and then carry on through summer. And boy, was I right. This is a single plant. I literally just came up here and checked. There's only 1 rooted vine. The rest are branches coming off that main vine. And what do we have? Well, right here, the plant is officially done now, by the way. You could tell because of the way it is. It's mostly dead. And there are yet still more melons. There's 1 right here. There are 2 right here. There is another one right here. There is another one right here that's also ready. And not only that, but I've already harvested 5 melons. So I have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think there was 1 more hiding around the corner. At least 11 melons, at least 10, let's say, from a single plant, one that is described as being Minnesota Midget. Again, I did not make that name. That's the name that it's given. And they've actually been really good. Super fragrant, really delicious when chilled. I've been enjoying them quite a bit. This is actually the most success I've ever had with any melon. So highly encourage, if you guys have struggled with growing melons before, grow this one. It should do well. It won't be actually tiny. It'll take up a decent amount of space, but as a reward, you will get many decent sized melons out of that single plant. So now what I want to do is I do want to take it down entirely because it's mostly dead. And it's honestly been a nuisance to walk around all over this area and trying to avoid stomping on this plant. Now, the one that I just ripped, you could see how much I struggled. This one, there's a chance it will not ripen properly. You want to generally pull them where they just pop off the vine, like the first one that I grabbed here. This one already has some orange color on it. It smells like melon. So this is one that is actually field ripe, and boy, is it dense and heavy. The last 2 that I just pulled off here might not make it, but honestly, I'm sick of waiting. I already have a refrigerator full of melons, and there's plenty. So let's go ahead and get this plant out of the way, and then we'll get back some tomato removal. In true fashion for me, it's time to wrap this up with more tomato talk. So here we are at the tomato wall. This is a tomato wall that did really, really well this year. This year it produced bountiful pounds, hundreds of pounds of tomatoes. They were absolutely delicious. The sauce tomatoes were great. The Cherokee purples were great. And then they all stopped producing. And what does that mean? Almost always, in my case, has meant that root knot nematodes have moved in. And that is what I'm assuming today, is that all of these plants have suffered from it. And so what's the point of leaving them in here to literally just sit here, propagate disease to the rest of my plants, and give me absolutely nothing in return? It's been literally, I think, 2 months since I've harvested a tomato from these plants. And so their free rent is done. It's time to chop them out. Let's go ahead and start with this Cherokee purple, which has been my most disappointing. Like I said, at the beginning of the year, fantastic, got tons of tomatoes, but it just kind of gave up. And honestly, it's grown pretty well. That's the thing that's kind of surprising, is it has a lot of vegetative growth, but no fruit set. So time to chop. We'll pull the roots. We'll give it a quick inspection and get this thing out of the way. put it in the burn pile with the rest of the stuff. Whew. Moment of truth, time to pull these roots. So what we have here is an absolute horrendous case of root knot nematodes. That's one of the only issues with growing heirloom tomatoes, is that they're very susceptible to some of these diseases. And just look at that, guys. These roots, they are all knotted up. This is loaded with root knot nematodes. So that's definitely the problem, and it is a big problem. It's a story as old as time, at least when it comes to me and my garden now, because this has been the recurring theme for the past last year and all of this year. Root knot nematodes, what a problem. If anyone has a solution that they've tried that works, let me know. Over in that field, I've actually been getting a decent amount of tomatoes, and that's where I did the mustard cover crop. So I feel like that kind of works. And my plan here is to essentially pull these tomato plants and then go ahead and plant a bunch of mustard and try to work that into the soil. I'm going to be careful when I pull the roots of these plants to try to get as many roots as I could possibly get. But I think that's it for this, guys. I am going to be over here, sadly, pulling more nematode tomatoes. It's not all that bad. I got a great harvest this year. I can't complain, but it is a bummer that I'm not getting those long harvests like I used to get. So more solutions to come in the future. Hopefully we'll figure this out, but I'll see you guys next time. It's great to be back in the garden. I truly feel like I got all of my energy back after literally being sick for an entire week and not doing a single thing in here. So see you guys around next time. And say goodbye to your tomatoes. Make space for a fall winter garden. There's no point in leaving these plants to struggle and just waste space in your garden.